Hey guys, it's Jack. Let's rank every Snatch game from the US seasons and All-Stars. Whether you love it or hate it, Snatch Game is probably here to stay, so let's take a look back and see if Snatch Game has stayed consistent or if it started to get worse in recent memory. There really isn't a set rhyme or reason behind my rankings, which I know really upsets people on Reddit. That's just kind of how my brain works, but feel free to disagree.
I've done a lot of extensive videos on Snatch Game and the analysis of the whole concept, so I don't want to sugarcoat this intro. Let's just jump into the ranking.
Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing. I'm trying to hit 100k by the end of the year, and with your help, I could totally do that. Majority of you guys aren't subscribed, so I would just love to have you here. Anyways, that's all. What is the worst Snatch game? Is it really even a question that season 14 is the worst Snatch game? Even with a year of perspective and trying to decipher the edit to see if there's actually a funny Snatch game in there, it's still not great. Every single other comedy challenge this season, this was a funny group, but I guess Snatch game just wasn't really their forte. And it ultimately came down to a lot of the choices that the queens made. A lot of them pick charismatic people for who they are rather than what their branding is and how it's funny because of that. The winner of the challenge, Deja, made the best choice. Little John is funny because of the quotes, the high energy, and his voice. Drew Barrymore is more funny because she's a charismatic person and it just doesn't translate as well to Snatch Game. So I feel like going ultra negative, aside from helping set up next episode, actually makes the performance feel more authentic than it could have been if they tried to play it straight. Like, okay, yes, they could have played it off where Rue is laughing at the jokes, but I don't know if that would have been as well received. But with the power of editing, I guess they could turn any joke, even if it wasn't really funny on set, into a home run, just with a couple clever cuts. But instead, they did it in the reverse, and we ended up with a unique and kind of uncomfortable time, but the more I watch it, the less cringy it gets.
E.T. phone my home.
Okay.
But you want to know what stays cringy every single time you watch it? All-Stars 1 Gaffin. Is this a Snatch Game? No. Did it replace Snatch Game on the season? Yes. Was this a mistake? Yes. Okay, with the twist and the teams, I don't really know how they could have done Snatch Game well, but I really feel like there could have been something better done than this. They are still impersonating celebrities, but they left in every single mess up take in order to justify bottom placements, but that just takes away from the overall product, and that just makes everything harder to watch.
I heard you went to the doctor recently. Oh shit. So is this a do-over or is this a take two?
I feel like this was the first sign that everyone was done kind of dirty on All-Stars 1. They come in to do impressions in a format that they don't really understand, in another format that they don't really understand in teams, and are there to tell jokes that don't really have proper setup or punchline. Oh my god, I feel so bad for them. The reason it's higher than season 14 is that it's just so of its time, and that's what I really enjoy about it. You're never gonna get something like this on Drag Race again, and even if it is a huge miss, I still end up kind of enjoying it in like a sadistic way.
What is it, my joke?
Yeah.
Oh.
Up next, we have season 3, and I just don't have a ton to say. I think Stacey did great. I liked Raja's one joke. Yara was funny for all the wrong reasons, and I do have a soft spot for Alexis Mateo's Alicia Keys. But even with these 4, I can't really remember a lot of the jokes. I just remember their performances, and this is after just marathoning through all of the different Snatch games. When 2 out of the 4 entertaining performances were memorable because they were bad impressions, you know you're in for kind of a rough time. The least I can say is that it was still early on, so they didn't have a lot to go off of when it came to how Snatch Game worked and the comedy behind it, but even then, they had the reference of the previous season with some really great impressions. Before the ranking continues, here's a word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by HelloFresh. I had a couple New Year's resolutions that all pertain to food. One of them was to improve my cooking because my skills compared to my roommates is pretty subpar. And another was just to eat out less because it's not as healthy and it wastes a lot of money. Well, with HelloFresh, I can work on those resolutions all at the same time. HelloFresh is an extremely convenient service that helps you order pre-portioned meals right to your door. They have 35 weekly recipes that appeal to a ton of different needs. For example, I get really busy and I just need something really fast, so I chose the quick and easy option and they sent me meals according to that. I was able to make the chili ginger pork noodles in just about 15 minutes, which is so much quicker than what I normally do for cooking. Because all the ingredients are already packaged for you and the recipes are on the website, it just makes things so quick and easy. And you're actually saving money because HelloFresh is 25% cheaper than takeout. I love this service, and as a college student, it's saving me so much pain. So if you're interested, go to HelloFresh.com and use code JackFed21 for 21 free meals plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com using code JackFed21 for 21 free meals and free shipping. Check out HelloFresh, and now let's get back to the video. And up next, we have season 11. These next few placements are carried by only a couple queens that did super well, but their performances were so good that it justified them being above the other placements. So for season 11, Silky, Nina, and Suga easily carried the Snatch game. People complain and say that Silky was just plain Silky, and I think it was more that she was playing to her strengths with a person that she could do super well as, rather than her just playing herself. I think it's a fine line. Nina's character swap went well, but I think a solo performance as Harvey could have won her the challenge, and Suga's impression was on point, and it's just a very contagious personality. The thing that makes this so low is that the other impressions kind of tanked the game. The bottom three this episode of Vanjie, Brooke, and Evie were so obviously the worst of the challenge that it hurt, especially after these three were the frontrunners and did super well at the improv earlier in the season. And while yes, the top three were very consistent and funny in their performance, there wasn't a joke that really stuck with me that I still think about to this day.
Because the devil's lettuce is actually God's gift.
What the hell is going on?
Up next, we have All Stars 4, which in hindsight, I would almost even move down. Trinity's Caitlyn was funny, but I've never really been a big fan of Manila's Barbra Streisand. She had a couple good jokes in there, but in my opinion, I think Naomi definitely should have taken that top spot. She was extremely in character, had multiple jokes land, and that ending, oh my god, it was so funny.
How are you guys?
Hi, Wendy.
And it would have been the perfect redemption storyline for her because she was in the bottom for her original Snatch game. The thing that really tears this Snatch game down though is the interactions between Gia and Latrice. Latrice has never played a Snatch game without chaos surrounding her. I feel so bad. When she broke character, I knew it was serious. She was so done with it. Just by the look on her face, I knew she had this inner turmoil of trying to remain professional but also just being so annoyed. Especially for her first time run and trying to shake up the format, I just don't think this was the best showcase for Snatch Game of Love, but I am glad that they kept doing it.
My bathroom is the only place that I'll ever take my wig off in front of anybody. Just my reflection.
I feel sorry for that mirror.
Up next, we have season 2, which I still think holds up a lot. It's not as quick as the more modern Snatch games, but of course, Tatiana and Pandora killed it. Their performances were so on point for their characters, especially after having no prior knowledge of what Snatch Game really is. And if you plop these performances in a modern season, they would still be super successful. But other than these two, yeah, not everyone really had the same energy or success in this challenge. I'm really having a hard time remembering any other performance here, so I guess we should just move on. It still does rank higher than the other ones because both Tatiana and Pandora gave performances that still hold up so much, and that's really important to talk about.
Oh boy,
And finally, for this sort of threshold, the last one is season 4. I feel like this one may be a little controversial, but honestly, watching it back, it's just not really my favorite, but it is definitely above these other ones. To me, it's just another example of there being a lot of good on the Snatch game, but just a little too much chaos and cringe for me to really enjoy it watching it through. My rankings don't really always have reasoning, but I guess for these bottom ones up until season 4, as a viewer watching the Snatch game back, I don't want to have to scroll through to find the really good performances and the really good jokes among all the chaos. And there's just way too much content that I don't want to watch in this Snatch game. The bottom row, aside from Dita and Chad, were a mess, and Milan on the top row also added to that chaos too. If Snatch game performances were boring, you'd just kind of forget them, but these were very memorable because they were very bad. Of course, that shouldn't take away from Willem, Dita, and the other one because they all gave really good performances, and also Chad gave a performance that redefined Snatch game. Tatiana and Stacy were really good examples of what good Snatch games are, but Chad just knocked it out of the park and showed all the potential this challenge has. The prop gags, how you volley, just how far an impression can go, it was all there, and it's kind of the blueprint. So that definitely adds a ton of points, but when I have to sit through the Snooki body slam or Beyonce farting in her hand, it takes away a lot of those points that were just added.
The level of unprofessionalism, far too much.
At this point, all of the Snatch games going forward, I will think about them, and I think about them overall positively. I feel like this next tier is the Snatch games that I'm not really in love with, but they definitely don't have as much cringe. This one though definitely borders that last tier, season 10. What I don't like, and I still find a little cringy, is the interactions between Blue Ivy and Beyonce. It just makes Beyonce look really mean. But the good of the Snatch game definitely puts it up pretty high, and I think that the Blue Ivy stuff, it's not fun to watch, but I don't really remember it until I put the Snatch game on. It just all ends up being one of the most standard Snatch games of the show. 3 low performances, 2 performances that were just okay so they were safe, and 3 really great performances. I think Monet and Eureka did really great jobs. Monet's was a very standard, solid, good performance, and Eureka's was a little
little more out there, and that's what I enjoyed about it, just full unbridled chaos, but in a good way. But the winner of the Snatch game, Aquaria, was definitely my favorite of the night, and I kind of want to do a full video on Aquaria, I'm not sure. I don't think the performance itself was like groundbreaking, defying because of the jokes being told. I think they were really funny and just a really good impression overall, but Aquaria winning this challenge and breaking the mold of the fashion queen stereotype of doing bad at Snatch game and in comedy challenges, it means a lot for the show. I think her run on the show just gave birth to a 2.0 type of fashion queen, but I'll save that for the video. It's a performance that means a lot for the rest of the show, but not so much in this condensed look, so that's why it ends up ranking low, but it also gives it points. What? There's no rhyme or reason to the ranking, I'm sorry.
Any hole is a goal.
What did you say?
Any hole is a goal.
Up next, we have season 12, and I don't know if this one's going to be controversial for me to do, but I don't know how I feel about this one. I think we're really keen on remembering the great performances like Jackie, that one queen, and of course Gigi, another fashion queen like I was just talking about, but something about the vibe or the jokes being told, it wasn't laugh out loud funny. I'm always entertained for the majority of the runtime, but even like the funniest jokes of the episode, they're just not as heavy hitting to me, and I may be alone on this one. The jokes are funny in concept, and that's what I'm entertained by, but it doesn't make me react with this like belly gut that some of the other Snatch games do. But with that being said, I feel like some people were under edited in the Snatch game that had good performances. I just wish we got to see a little more of Widow's Tina and Ike or more of Jan's Bernadette. I guess from Jan, we got one joke that didn't really land, so that's probably why they didn't really come back to her that often. But sometimes I forget how much I do enjoy Widow's performance, so I do wish we got to see more of it. Very serviceable, good performances, there's just better at this point.
Jennifer Hudson.
No.
And now let's get to season 15. Jack, if you're watching this months from now, how is the recency bias doing? I think this is a really fair spot for this Snatch game. There were some really great performances, some really middle of the road, and some really, really bad. So to me, it all ends up being a middle spot on the ranking. At first, I thought I was going to rank them separate as well as All-Star 7 too, but I'm going to keep them both together because it just seems like a joint package to me. I'm going to save a lot of my thoughts for my overanalyzing video of this episode because I ended up recording that audio before this one, and I got heated in that one. I'll just go over the major beats here. The runtime sucks with this many queens. I think two Snatch games could have worked this early if they just had the proper runtime. Some queens only end up with their intro and one joke, and you just end up forgetting them. I thought that Sasha could have been really funny, and she might have been funny, but she was cut down so much. Lucy and Mistress knocked it out of the park. Marsha, Jax, and Amethyst all did really good too. I was just shocked and also entertained about the character choices in general here. I mean, the Virgin Mary, Mona Lisa, and then Trisha Paytas, like what? Sugar, Spice, and Aura were all really, really hard to watch, and I think they really balanced out two amazing performances of the Snatch game. So yes, it's still very, very early, and I don't really know how this is going to look in a couple months. I feel like it's probably not going to move down on my list, and it may move up, but I feel like this is just a good spot.
So I think he's 100% my son?
I am so divided on All Stars 5 because it's pretty divided itself. 3 extremely great performances and 3 really bad ones. Okay, Blair wasn't bad, and maybe it's worse because you compare her to Juju and Shay, but India and Miss Cracker were definitely way too hard to watch. It still kind of surprises me that Miss Cracker hasn't really had a good Snatch game performance yet, and I think it probably comes down to her overthinking and a lot of pressure being here. We can see her do so good in stand-up challenges because I feel like she has the most control, but here she just doesn't have that same control, so she over-prepares, and then we just get a pretty flat performance. But for every Miss Cracker, India, or Blair St. Clair, there was a Juju, Alexis, or Shay. Thank God. This may be an unpopular opinion, but I don't think Shay was the best in Snatch game. I think Alexis was hilarious, and Juju is one of my all-time favorite performances. Shay was really funny too, and that runway, I feel like that was their justification for giving her the top spot, but I just think Sensible 74 or just all of the little quips that Alexis had, those were the things that I remember. Overall, I think this is the best showcase of Snatch Game of Love, even though I do like All-Star 6's just a little better. The performances in that season were a little better, but I think this showed the most potential that the concept has.
Ribbit, I am a lady frog, and you are a sweet prince. I am convincing you. I would sensually walk to the thermostat and turn up the thermostat to a sensible 74 degrees.
I feel like season 8 is very similar to season 12 where it's very, very entertaining, but I'm not belly laughing at all of the jokes. There still were more jokes that I did find funnier than season 12, so that's why it is higher, and it's higher than some of these other seasons because I just think the bad performances weren't that bad. Naomi, Robbie, and Betty did a bad job, but it's not like a bad that sticks with you. I just kind of forget that it happened. Kimchi was just alright. I thought that Kimchi's early Martha was really great. And the top three of Thorgy, Derek, and Bob, they were very entertaining. They were all very in character, and I think that's what I enjoy the most. Even if the jokes didn't have me crying, I appreciate the Snatch game because the impressions were just top notch. And I also appreciate it because it's the first time that someone switched characters halfway through, which I think is really cool. I go back and forth on whether this or All Stars 5 should have been higher. I just switched it, but I think down the line I could switch it back. I really don't know.
But back to the matter at hand, I just wrote corn.
And then we get to All Stars 6. Like I said, I think All Stars 5 had the best showcase of the Snatch Game of Love concept, but I think these performances were just funnier. Trinity and Pandora weren't good, but they weren't offensively bad or cringy bad. It's just, again, I forget them. And then the other four queens all had multiple jokes land and just all gave such good performances. Eureka's Divine is very divisive. I think there were times where they did just a little too much, but also that is kind of the Divine character, so that's what I do appreciate about it. Raja took Rue's advice. It was the same joke every time, but the way it was delivered was really funny, and seeing Rue's reaction made me so entertained. Ginger versus Kylie, either one of them could have really won this challenge. It was a really tough one to judge. I think the reason they went for Ginger over Kylie is that Kylie was just a little more planned with everything. Ginger's jokes came a little more natural, while Kylie had the jokes that were funny, but she kind of already knew what she was gonna say. But like the rest of All Star 6, it's just a good time, and I'm just thoroughly entertained every time I watch it.
Well, I am a fitness expert, although I don't like to work out.
I originally had season 13 higher, but then I started to think about it more, and I think that it's good here. Sometimes with the later seasons of Snatch Game, it feels like they're just going through the motions. These are the questions, these are the jokes, let's see who's in the top and the bottom. But season 13's is one that I just really enjoy a lot because it felt refreshing. Something about it, there were just so many strong performances with only 3 weak ones. The jokes and the characters felt really refreshing. I think the impressions were all really on point, and it's just aged so well 2 years later. I do think Simone should have at least been in the top because she was so funny, and of course her runway meant so much, but I understand the potential reasoning behind it and why she was just called safe, but again, she should have at least been high. Mick is another fashion queen that was then shown to be funny here. I think that the Paris was just top notch, so funny. Even someone like Utica, I don't think the jokes landed and her humor isn't for everyone, but I saw the intention and I'm glad she went for it. I just overall leave the Snatch Game feeling really satisfied.
Hey, Rue, how's it going?
Just let me know when the cameras are rolling and we'll kill it.
Well, we've started. The cameras are rolling.
Oh shit, that's so embarrassing. Sorry.
All Stars 3 to me is so hard to place. And going off of my criteria of what I've done so far, it seems like I should probably place this lower, but I don't know. There's something that makes me want to place it this high. There were a lot of bad performances, arguably more bad than good, but the 3 good performances I feel like outweigh it by a ton. Shangela was playing Jennifer Lewis. People kind of complain that it's just Shangela, but I do think that it's just a character that's up her alley, and she elevated it just a little bit. But Aja and Dela should have been the top 2. I love both of these performances so much. I do see where people come from when they don't prefer Aja's Crystal in the top because it comes off a little quotey to the iconic video. But the thing is, all of the quotes fit in the context of what she was answering, and I think that's what I found so entertaining. We just got the embodiment of Crystal, and Aja just overall deserved better on this season. But then we get to Ben de la Creme, who has just given 2 of the greatest of all time performances. Something about Dela and Jinx doing characters, they are just so good at it. I feel like 3 or 4 of the characters that they've done over the course of their time on the show, they aren't the most well known, but they have that skill to just rope you in and make you laugh even if you don't have that background of the person. And on top of the jokes just being funny in general, I'm not a very superstitious person, but it literally looks and feels like they got possessed by this person. The way they play and impersonate these characters, and especially the makeup that Dela does, it really feels like it's this person sitting there. So I just really can't put this performance lower because Dela is just so good.
Are you having a good time, Crystal? Darling, I'm having the worst time of my life. I just want to walk away so bad.
This next one was a really last minute decision to kind of move out, and again, it might be controversial, but I'm gonna go for it. Right outside the top 5 is season 5. Like I mentioned just a second ago, Jinx and Dela are so good at impressions. If Chad redefined how you can play Snatch Game, Jinx redefined who you can play. Most people had no idea who Little Edie was going in, but you left with a good idea, and even if you didn't really know what Little Edie was all about, you thought that the impression was at least funny. The top 3 had so many good jokes, but I think the people that rank this one really highly forget how top heavy it was. it was basically only Alaska, Roxy, and Jinx telling jokes. Everyone kind of flatlined. And we have some all-time really bad performances like Alyssa as Katie or Lanesha as Celia Cruz. And though I talk about cringe and everything in this video, for some reason I just don't find these performances as hard to watch, so that's probably why it ranks higher too. It's probably because they are very iconic, very shared performances, so I'm desensitized to it and I find them entertaining, and that makes me willing to sit through the bad performances here just to get to the good jokes, unlike on season 4.
Is that your fragrance?
It is. Would you like to try some?
No.
Okay.
When I moved season 5 down, 2 Snatch games moved up, and the first one is season 7. I was looking at the Snatch game with a different perspective for the initial ranking of this video, but the more I think about it, it's just a really good Snatch game. Max and Miss Fame definitely had my least favorite performances. I don't think Jaden was nearly as bad as these two. She did have the joke land, it was just a shame that she kept going for that joke afterwards. As for the safe performances, Violet was very entertaining as Alyssa, and Pearl was safe for Big Ange, which is surprising because I thought she did so good, and I guess in a different Snatch game she would have been high. Katya was really funny, but I think Ginger and Kennedy stole the show, and this is one of the most justified double wins. I think I ranked it lower in the top 5 originally because I basically had this one memorized. It's one of my most watched, but that should add to it rather than taking away, and I realized that towards the end. Also, I really haven't mentioned the contestants for the Snatch game in these, but this is kind of the first and the only one that I remember the guest contestants being so entertaining. Michael and Tamar had really great chemistry, but especially Tamar. You know when you can see an image, but you can hear it, even though it's just an image? That's Tamar's laugh for this whole Snatch game. I want Tamar back so bad, and it's because she adds so much to every single challenge that she's a part of. Her appearance and the performances just all sweeten the deal, so that's why it ended up in the top 5.
It's a good answer, but not a match, darling.
Well, could I get a match, please? It's a fake cigarette.
One that I've been bumping up my list that I've been thinking about and talking about more and more is season 9. I had it in like the top 10 and I didn't think that it should have been any higher, but then I just kept watching it and seeing all the characters, and so many people did such a good job. In this past episode of Drag Race on season 15, Lux mentions that she's gonna do a better job as Amanda Lepore than Trinity, jokingly saying that Trinity didn't really do a good job with it, and then that got me thinking, no wait, no, she did a really good job. And so did Valentina and Aja and Shay, who were all called safe. And that's not because it was rigged or whatever, it's because there were just so many strong performances. Alexis Michelle's Liza is so on point, it is such a top-notch impression, and I could hear her do it forever. And choices like Marlene Dietrich or Jasmine Masters seem risky, but they both pulled them off so well. And yes, Peppermint and Cynthia are very hard to watch, but there were so many strong performances around them, I don't really care. It ultimately just gets this high because most people have at least one joke land, and it's just consistent. Very, very consistent.
Jasmine, what season were you on Drag Race?
Does it matter? Did I win?
So we made it to the top 3. If you've been following along or playing Process of Elimination, you know what's coming. Or if you just have an idea of what's popular in the fandom, I'm sorry I didn't stray too far from the path. At number 3, I have All Stars 2. It has its issues that I feel like people would rather avoid, but I feel like a lot of the critical look at All Stars 2 comes out of it being such a beloved season. I try to avoid too much in my rankings by just ranking things as, oh, they're iconic, this slayed, you know what I mean? Because a lot of the time when you call something iconic, it means you have nostalgic rose-colored glasses on. And I know I've said iconic in this video and probably in the past, but I don't let it try to have too much impact. I just find it kind of a cop-out when someone defaults to the idea that something is iconic but can't really say anything else about it. So yes, All Stars 2 Snatch game is iconic, it also has its problems, but even when you watch it now, it still holds up. Tatiana got one good joke in there, Detox was just kind of forgettable, and I know Roxy's impression as Alaska was bad, but it's a bad with the side of interesting that keeps me entertained because Alaska is sitting on the panel with her. And I guess that also goes with Tatiana too, with Juju and Raven being in the room. Other seasons, Queen's bomb, and that's all we really get. But with Tatiana and Roxy, it's really interesting to see how they fail because they're under the pressures that we can see in the room. It just makes the bad performance more watchable, and I appreciate that. Alyssa and Ginger were still funny, but rightfully safe. I think Fifi gave a really fun performance, and it could have gone in the same way that Jaden's performance did, but I think she was able to find a lot of peaks and valleys. But everyone remembers this Snatch game because of Katya and Alaska. They are two extremely hilarious performances, both delivered in very different ways that is comfortable to that queen. Their interactions, the timing, it is just textbook Snatch game, and it still holds up so much today. What I also enjoy about the Snatch game is the fact that it feels like an all-star level Snatch game. Obviously, we didn't get that proper Snatch game on All Stars 1, so when you go into the first real All-Star Snatch game, you don't really know what to expect. How have they learned from their last one? Have they learned from their last one? Are they going to be just as funny? Are they going to bomb this time around? We didn't know until this Snatch game, and I think they did a really good job showcasing all those questions. It's just a classic. On the 50th watch, I still find it just as entertaining. It needs to be this high.
Sorry, Bjork, but not a match, darling.
It's fine.
Out of the top two, it was hard to choose, but one of the choices that I made for this ranking video makes it a lot easier. So at number 2, we have season 6. When you look at it on the surface with the placements and the characters, you're like, okay, this seems pretty standard. But to me, all the rules get thrown out of the window because the top 3 just made it all worth it. Once again, with Dela, the makeup, the impersonation, if this was actually Maggie Smith and Dela left to go get a sandwich, I wouldn't know. It's just a masterclass in how you can do Snatch Game and how you can be successful at it. But then we get to Bianca, who half the time people forget that she didn't win. And that's because her performance was just a winning performance. Up her alley, but very elevated. She had props, she had jokes, but she was able to quip. If this became a double win, I wouldn't be shocked. But then we have someone like Adore who was almost as good, but still like top notch. She would have won in a different season. And it all finally came together when I watched the pit stop for this week. I think the reason that this Snatch game was so successful was because they were having fun with it. They said that they were passing notes to each other while they were in between takes. Just overall, the pressures that are normally there for Snatch game weren't there.
Just sitting next to you and just like talking about everybody and like writing notes and being super dumb.
We did write notes together.
And then you watch it back and you realize the vibe is pretty different, which is kind of true for a lot of the Golden Age. I feel like since maybe Trixie bombed in All Stars 3, we started to realize how much pressure they're under with Snatch Game, and that became a common storyline. But with this season, the whole vibe, even if they were under pressure, we didn't really see that, and it just became more fun and better to watch. And out of the top 3, people like Jocelyn and Darian knocked it out of the park. Like with All Stars 2, it just holds up so much, and I can watch it again and again and again. But at number 1, it's almost like a cop-out, but I really just can't justify putting anything else here. I'd rather be predictable than try to be a contrarian and put something higher than this, because All Stars 7, there is no competition. And yes, a lot of the entertainment came from the fact that they were able to do 2, but to me, that shouldn't take away from the ranking. It just makes it the most justified. Not a single performance was bad. I guess you can argue that Evie's Rico was the weakest, but I still don't think, even with the positive All-Star 7 editing, it was terrible. And do you know why this Snatch game was so good? Because of what I just mentioned a second ago, they were having fun. When you have fun or enjoyment with a concept or a challenge, it's always going to shine through, and that's shown through here. The pressures were just so low, and they can do these impressions and just have a good time with it. I was just so happy with it. They could have been just okay performances, but if they were enjoying themselves, it would have made it more entertaining. But then the thing is, the performances are amazing. Jinx as Judy is probably the best Snatch game of all time. It's just so many good performances. I really can't go through all of them. I love them all. If we had questions about All Stars 2 about how the queens would come back and do in the challenge, we had similar but even more elevated questions for the winners, and they completely delivered. It's an obvious number 1, but I think everyone understands why it's here. All Star 7 Snatch game is just the pinnacle of Snatch game and kind of Drag Race in general.
They changed it to drag queen.
And with that, let's wrap it up. Whether you love it or hate it, Snatch Game is not going anywhere. Sometimes I feel burnt out with it, but then I find a new reason to love it. I love how extremely unique the comedy is. This is comedy that can only really apply here. People who do really great impressions, it's so interesting to me. How to think on your feet in a setting like this. All of it is so hard and so interesting, and I really just appreciate it. So keep them coming, and if you enjoyed this video, I'll probably do the international ranking as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I think on Tuesday, I'll have the over analysis for episode 2. Hopefully by the time this goes up, my episode 1 over analysis is back up. If it's not, I'm working on it. It is just frustrating with copyright. And on roughly Thursday or Friday, I'll have the over analysis for episode 3, so I'm all caught up. School is starting back up this week, so I'll be juggling just a little bit, but I just feel so motivated to make videos right now, so I hope you guys stick around. Make sure you subscribe, follow me on all of my social medias linked below, and I'll see you soon with another video.